morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Michelle Au. I serve in the Georgia House of Representatives. I apologize that Mike and I are joining you a little bit late, but I assure you it was for a very good reason. But before I tell you where we've been, let me frame how far we've come. So in the days following the March 16th shootings in 2021, the 5 AAPI lawmakers in office at the time dropped a slate of public safety bills in response to that tragedy. 2 of the bills had to do with language access to law enforcement for reporting incidents of violence and discrimination. And 1 bill had to do with gun safety. Because it's not possible to acknowledge the events of March 16th and the fact that they could not have had the deadly effect we saw without the easy, the ready, the immediate access the murderer had to a gun. So what happened to that slate of bills that we dropped that year? Well, I hate to tell you this, but they were completely ignored. Thoughts and prayers abounded, but hard action was scarce. I finished out my first term in the Georgia General Assembly just as we started, with our Republican majority refusing to give even the most common sense gun safety legislation even the courtesy of a committee hearing. But what has happened since with our AAPI caucus? Well, what happened is that we persisted, we stayed, and we grew. And this past year, we elected the largest legislative AAPI caucus in the continental United States, right here in Georgia. We pushed, we did not back down, and we made sure that we were heard, not just for ourselves, but for our communities, and for those voices not always heard in buildings like this, and for those we lost on March 16th of 2021. So this morning, I'm pleased to tell you that Mr. Webb and I just walked back from presenting HB 161, the first substantive committee hearing for a gun safety bill that we have had since the tragic events 2 years ago to this day. Because the AAPI community insists on being seen. We insist on being heard. And we know that in order to do that, we must raise our voices and demand it. So today we honor and remember those that we lost, and we continue to work on their behalf and in their honor. Their names are Sun Chung Park, Hyun JungGrant, Sun Cha Kim, Yong Ae Yue, Xiaojie Tan, Daoyou Feng, Delaina Yaun Gonzalez, and Paul Andre Michels. May our memories of them continue to be a blessing, and may the injustice of these senseless losses continue to fuel the change we need to see. And with that, I'd like to open to any questions for any of our speakers or community members here. Any questions? Raul. So you might remember that right after the March 16th shootings, the API legislators and I dropped a slate of 3 bills. 2 of the bills actually had to do with language access and interfacing with law enforcement, because we realized that when it comes to incidents of API hate, discrimination, and violence, many of these incidents are actually vastly underreported. And that is for a lot of reasons, right? But one of the reasons has to do with language access, particularly in immigrant-heavy communities, that there is a difficulty and a reticence to engage with law enforcement, particularly when there are cultural or language barriers, right? So we continue to work on this piece. Marvin Lim, one of our API legislators, has been particularly effective in reforming some of our law enforcement language access training modules. And one other thing I will note is that we continue to work around the edges of other bills that are in progress. One that I will note is HB 520 this year. It's the second act of the mental health reform bill. Many people in the AAPI community have reported difficulties in accessing mental health care, again, for language access issues. So one of the things that I was able to add as an amendment to the Mental Health Parity Act Part 2, HB 520, is increase processing and accessing of information about mental health providers and what languages and cultures they are from, in order to have a better database of how we can reach our immigrant communities for mental health care. Any other questions? Thank you all so much for coming out today.